Nancy Bleuer, a 54-year-old schoolteacher from America, knew her students through and through. She knew them so well that she sensed it right away when one of the kids was keeping a big secret. Even though the young boy didn't say anything at school, it appeared that his home situation was anything but healthy. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. The 4-year-old Camden had just arrived at school that day. He was one of schoolteacher Nancy Bleuer's students. Nancy had been in the profession for decades, so she thought she had seen it all. It had been years since something in her classroom had shocked her like this. While the rest of the class was full of energy, talking loudly amongst themselves, and ran through the classroom, Camden went straight to his seat. He didn't say anything and stared off into the distance. Nancy noticed it immediately and pulled him aside to talk to him one-on-one. The young boy couldn't keep in the reason that had put him in such a mood. The boy immediately burst into tears as he walked into the hallway with his teacher. Nancy closed the door quickly so that Camden's classmates wouldn't see him in this vulnerable mood. "What's the matter, Camden?" the teacher asked her student. He just started to cry louder. It took a few minutes before he could finally give some sort of explanation for his mood. Between each sniffle, Camden managed to get one sentence out. This sentence made Nancy's hairs stand on end. How had she missed this? What were the signs that she hadn't seen? Or did this just start? The emotional boy managed to tell her, between bouts of crying, that he was afraid to see his father again. Nancy's thoughts flew in every direction. Why would the boy be afraid? Was he being abused? Without being too obvious, Nancy checked the boy's body for bruises. Nancy Bleuer, like many other teachers, started teaching because of her love for kids. To her, helping kids grow up was an honor above all others. She knew all too well about her importance in a child's youth. While Nancy stood in the hallway with Camden, she thought back on the time she had with him. She was looking for signs that she may have missed. When she thought back on the weeks before, she realized he had been acting a bit differently. The boy had always been so enthusiastic and playful, but that had changed in the past few weeks. How could she have missed this? Nancy didn't know what to say. When Camden told Nancy the reason that he was afraid to see his dad, her whole world started to turn upside down. What a terrible secret for a young boy to have to carry around. Nancy felt even more of a need to help the boy. It was time for her to make a move. The teacher picked the boy up and brought him to the teacher's lounge, where she gave him a bar of chocolate. Afterwards, she went over to the phone to call Camden's house. She found his number in the phone book and dialed it. The phone rang 3 times before Daryl, Camden's father, picked up. "This is Daryl," he said. The man might not have answered the phone if he had known that it was his son's teacher who now knew about his secret that was calling. He obviously never wanted his secret to get out. He was shocked when he found out that his son had opened his mouth. Nancy had thought long and hard about whether or not she should contact the father. She knew very well that he could be annoyed by her calling. The secret was about something that happened outside of the classroom, so normally it wouldn't be her responsibility to take care of. But Nancy still decided to call. She felt deeply for Camden, the boy she had started to care a great deal about. The fact that Camden was having such a rough time in his home life did her a great deal of pain. She didn't want to rub Daryl the wrong way, so she asked her question carefully. His answer only strengthened her want and need to get involved. The story Camden told her was one like she had never heard before. The young boy told her that for the last month there had been strange people in uniform that rang the doorbell nearly every day. They were there for his father. Nancy listened in complete shock. Strange people showing up for his dad. What was going on in that house? Camden let her know that he was terrified that they would take his father away again. This wouldn't be the first time. Nancy decided she needed to help the boy. Nancy had seen other kids have to go through similar scenarios. This often had a huge emotional and psychological impact on the children, which left them traumatized and emotionally damaged. Nancy knew she had to take action before the same happened to Camden. She could see that he had a difficult home life. He was confused and sad and didn't know how to deal with the problems. This is why Nancy decided to call the father to get to the bottom of it. Thankfully, the father picked up the phone and answered her question. Nancy had a strong feeling of responsibility, so she saw it as her job to help Camden feel better. Camden had told her his deepest secret because he knew he could trust her. She wouldn't let him down, even if it meant she would get into troubles herself. When it finally became clear what exactly was happening, Nancy made a life-changing decision. She had to choose between herself and someone else. It wasn't a difficult choice for the schoolteacher. She had always found others to be more important than herself. This is why she was such a good teacher. Nancy was ready to sacrifice herself for her students' happiness. But before she could do this, it had to be determined if she was even able to. She went to the hospital and filled out the necessary paperwork. Once everything had been set in ink, her doctor advised her to first meet with a psychologist. The psychologist put Nancy through several tests to make sure she was mentally stable enough to make this decision. If she decided to go through with it, there was a long and arduous journey ahead. They needed to be sure that Nancy could do this. All of the test results, physical and mental, were very positive. Only once Nancy saw the results on paper did she realize the gravity of this life-changing choice. Camden couldn't contain his joy when Nancy told him that she was going to help him. Not many people would have made the same choice as Nancy. It required a level of empathy that only a small percent of the population has. It goes to show just how good of a woman Nancy is. She was overjoyed that she could do something for Camden. He wouldn't have to worry anymore. The reason that Camden was so upset and that there were so many strangers in uniform at their house was due to the fact that Camden's father, Daryl, was very ill. Daryl Peterson's kidneys no longer worked very well. They got weaker every day, and it didn't seem as though he would have much longer to live. At the time that Nancy called Daryl to get answers, his kidneys were only working at about 20%. Daryl frequently had to undergo kidney dialysis, which made him look so ill that his son could barely stand to look at him. This heartbreaking detail made Nancy realize that she had no other choice. Without parents, a kid can never grow up happy. The fact that Camden was already so unhappy and had to prepare for a life without his father was heartbreaking. Nancy had no other choice, with her heart of gold, but to help the family. Her choice would be life-changing. You might think that Nancy offered to babysit when Daryl was feeling too ill, or that she had offered to get groceries for the family to relieve them of a few chores at least. But no, she was going to do much more than that. What she offered to the family was more than they could have ever hoped for. Nancy wanted to solve the problem once and for all. Shallow solutions would never truly make Camden happy. So she offered Daryl something spectacular when she called him. Nancy had asked him if it was true that he was so ill, to which he responded, yes. He explained that he didn't have much longer to live. The schoolteacher was so distraught by the news that she immediately went to the hospital for the necessary tests. When Nancy received her results, it turned out she was the perfect candidate. What a coincidence. Nancy was filled with joy. She could help the family. Nobody in Camden's family could believe that someone could be so selfless. They had already accepted the awful truth that they would have to go on without Daryl. But no, it was true. Camden's teacher was prepared to give one of her kidneys to Daryl. Nancy had only met Daryl twice at parent-teacher conferences at school. And still, she was prepared to give him one of her kidneys to save his life. Camden and Daryl's family was so happy with her offering that they spoiled her with flowers and gifts. The wait list was extremely long, which is why Daryl hadn't received another donor. Unfortunately, all of Daryl's family turned out to be unfit as organ donors after getting tested. There didn't appear to be any light at the end of the tunnel. It was a fantastic surprise when Nancy offered what she did. There was finally hope. The schoolteacher, who was already known for her preparedness to do anything in her power for her students, was about to undergo the most selfless act. An act that would most likely save Camden's father's life. The news of Nancy donating one of her kidneys to a student's parent was so unbelievable that it didn't take long for a news station to pick up the story. Her story of selflessness shocked and touched many. On the day of the surgery, they filmed her as she walked into the hospital. Nancy waved to her friends and family before disappearing behind the sliding doors. It was quiet for a few hours, but then came the news that nobody had expected. There appeared to be a problem. The news came out that Daryl still had doubts about the whole situation. The surgery wasn't without risk, and he would never forgive himself if something happened to Nancy. Especially now that she was so prepared to go so far to help his family, he couldn't imagine his remorse if the surgery were to affect her negatively. Everyone was stunned. Were they still going to do the surgery? Was this all for nothing? Thankfully not. Nancy made herself very clear. Nothing was going to change her mind. She was going to go through with the kidney transplant, whether Daryl felt guilty or not. The surgery was performed by the best doctors in the area. This helped put Nancy's family's minds at ease. They couldn't entirely understand why she would risk so much for a man she barely knew, but stood behind their sweet Nancy's decision 100%. Thankfully, she was in good hands. The doctors had to remove the kidney from Nancy's body without causing any additional damage and then place the organ in Daryl's body. Thankfully, modern medicine is so advanced that surgeries like this can take place. A kidney transplant can save a life. Everything went quickly, and the surgery was a huge success. The doctors did their very best and successfully and carefully moved the kidney from one body to the other. Nancy was brought to a separate room where she would rest until she woke up from the anesthesia. When Nancy opened her eyes, all of Daryl's family was standing around her with more flowers and gifts. Even before her eyes were completely open, she was taken over by hugs and kind words. These gifts and compliments were nothing in comparison to the gift that Nancy had given Daryl. Camden was only 4, but he understood just how close his father came to death. He wouldn't have to worry about that for a while now. The young boy was extremely grateful to Nancy. He may not have been able to put into words just what it meant to him, but Nancy understood. Camden promised her something that made her smile from ear to ear. "I'm going to be the best student you've ever had," he told her. He would never disappoint her.